Welcome to another episode of Sports and Discourse with your host, Derek Stevenson. And today, y'all, I got special guest Shawn Gerton on the show. And Shawn, I'd like to welcome you, brother. We're going to get into some officiating and refereeing today, man.
Yeah, thanks, bro. It's been waiting for this for a long time. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely, man. And I think it's the perfect time because I got a whole lot of issues with how the game is being played in the NBA playoffs right now. So we're going to go over some stuff and we're just going to get into like the whole sports side of officiating because I think a whole lot of times like people really don't understand that aspect of the game and how it affects the game except for maybe on the surface level, but we never really had too many insiders tell us about that side of it.
Right.
So what I want to do first is I just want you to give me a little background and how you even got into officiating to begin with.
Well, it's kind of a funny story. I was working in a restaurant, Max Nerma's, and a guy walked in with like a championship ring on. And, I just asked him, what? I was like, what kind of ring is that? Well, he's told me he officiated the state football championship. I was like, oh, wow, really? And so then I asked him how he got into that. He just pointed over to where KHSAA was. He was like, yeah, you just go over there and you apply and take a test and like that. So when I got out of the restaurant business and now I got my evening free, I went over to, start football, but I also had a son that was going to be a freshman playing football. So I was like, you can't be two places at one time. So then I got into basketball and started, refereeing freshman, JV, middle school, rec league, just any league that I could. And then, so I just finished my 15th year of basketball and I'm going into my 6th year of football. So, yeah, it is an aspect that people don't think about. They think about the two teams on the floor or on the field. There's actually three.
Right.
And we kind of look at ourselves as the third team on the field, and we try to be the best team on the field or court. I mean, if we are the best team, then that means we done our job, you know, well.
And it's crazy that you mentioned that and you use the term the third best team, right? Or the third team, and you trying to be the best. And the reason why that's kind of interesting to me is because, you know, probably a couple of weeks ago, I had seen a video of the one official. What was that guy's name? Tim Donaway or the guy?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. And
so
Donahue,
Tim
yeah,
Donahue, and he was on somebody's show, and he made a statement about how they had did a game, and Allen Iverson had threatened one of the officials, and they kind of came together and was like, "Look, man, we're gonna go on and send AI a little message, so we gonna mess with him basically." And they for like the next 3 games, they basically picked with Allen Iverson. They called, carries and different things like
right.
that. And they said that at one point, Allen Iverson had approached one of them and was like, man, how long is it going to go on? And they were like, what you talking about, AI? And he was like, you know what I'm talking about, but how long is it going to go on? And they were just like, we don't know what you're talking about. But it was obviously, or it was obvious that they was basically making him pay a price for whatever it is that he had said. And I want to ask you, have you ever seen anything like that or seen guys take it a little too personal out there?
Um, I've really only seen it once of officials like, look, a guy, and this was a rec league, it wasn't a high school or anything, and he was like, look, we're not giving him any more calls, because he did have an attitude, this, that, and the other. And, for a lot of us, that's hard for us to do. And I think nowadays, things what Tim Donahue did, things like that's a little harder to get away because everything is recorded. Everybody got a video. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're doing third grade AAU to the NBA. All games are being recorded. So, those things are a lot harder to get away with nowadays. But yeah, there's probably, I mean, it's easy. I won't say it's easy, but yeah, sometimes you can send a message. But we have a lot of things in our toolbox as officials to go ahead and send that message early. And like, I had a official who now is an official in the SEC, tell me once. He said, you handle it early, you won't have a problem late. Basically said, if you got a problem, if you got somebody who's having a problem in that first quarter, go ahead, give them a technical, get it out of the way, and then you won't have a problem with them later. So that's pretty much been my philosophy. I think those kind of things don't happen nearly as much as they you probably used to.
That's what's up, man. And it's kind of wild because I feel like it's got to be very difficult to manage the game from that perspective because especially nowadays, just the younger generation, whether it be kids interacting with their parents or teachers, everybody demands an explanation. So, how often do you get frustrated with how much back and forth you have to have with players/coaches?
You know what? I don't, because you got to one thing, you got to set that tone early. Uh, if players, as long as I've been in this, a lot of players and coaches, they know me, and I try to make myself approachable. But we're not going to sit there and have a 2 minute conversation about a travel or about a foul. You ask the question, I answer it. We're gonna go on. It's over. So I think at the lower levels, you don't see it as much. In high school, you really don't see a lot of players looking for explanation like you do in the NBA. Now in the NBA, that's their livelihood. So that's the difference between once you go to college, doesn't matter if it's D3 or Division 1 and NBA or any professional league. That's their livelihood. That's how they're making their living. So you're gonna probably give them a little bit more leeway. But on the high school level, you let coaches know early. Coaches know who they can talk to. Most coaches know who they can't talk to. And so, it's kind of interesting that we have a philosophy among officiating. I answer questions, don't respond to statements. So if you got a question, come up to me, ask a question, I answer it. But that's it. After we answer it, we're done with it. We're gonna move on. If you out there making statements, I'm going to ignore you. To a point until you cross that line. And once you cross the line, then I'm gonna have to handle it one way or the other. But then I was listening to a podcast called Crown Ref, especially about officiating, and and she's a head of many conferences, the head of officials, SEC, ASUN, OVC. Her name's Lisa Mattingly, and she's actually from this area. And she's done like 18 Final Fours, national championship, WNBA, finals. So she's really big time. And she said something one time, and I can't wait to see her and ask her about this, is that, she's like, look, I got the gift of gab. So she's like, I'm a talker. So anytime a coach is looking at me for a certain way, look, I'm just going to go out there and say, okay, coach, what is it? Let's just get the elephant out of the room so we can move on. So, it also depends on some personality. Some people are more talkative, some people aren't. We don't have to give an explanation. But if you do get an explanation, it kind of build rapport with players and coaches, and that can make your job a little bit easier.
Got you. And the reason why I'm asking you is because not too long ago I had seen a video of a gentleman that was refereeing a AAU game. It looked like basketball game. And after the game, he got attacked by like
Yeah.
5 or 6 players. Parents was chasing him. And I felt bad for him because I said, man, look, at this age in my life, I can't fight no 5 or 6 teenagers. I would have just took the L and ran out the gym. But he stayed in there and he probably ended up getting hurt. I ain't for sure. But the reason why I'm asking you about that situation is because according to the New York Times, right, 70% of officials or referees quit within the first 3 years, right? And you said you've been doing this for, well, you said you're going into your 16th year.
But yeah,
So how did you ever have a moment where you felt like you was just gonna quit, or anything that was discouraging? How have you made it this long in the game?
first of all, most people who last those 3 years, we love it. You gotta understand, we love officiating just as much as players love playing, just as much as the coaches love coaching. So that's the big part of it. We love being out there. Um, but high school associations, rec leagues, all AAU, organization realize that's a problem. We are losing. We are losing. We're not replacing younger officials with older officials that's retiring across the board. There are some states with high school football that have to move games to Thursdays just to have enough officials to cover games.
Oh
They
man,
will work Thursday and then work Friday
that's crazy.
because there's just not enough officials. Um, so we recognize this is a problem. There is a nationwide campaign to try to get people to come out and officiate. And and so and you got to be careful with AAU stuff. And I do it because I sometimes I just miss the floor. I just miss being out there. By the time the end of the high school season, I could literally go 4 or 5 months into we have our camp without refereeing any basketball. So I go out there just to say, more than anything, I just miss it. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, we love it and we just miss it. So I want to be out there. But we do recognize that's a problem, and that's something that um, we're trying to get more younger people out there. If it's just one, especially in basketball, 1, 2 days a week, you'd be surprised how much that can just help an organization and cover these games because you know people don't realize if there's no officials, there's no game.
Right.
And at the end of the day, who is that hurting? That's hurting your kids. Your kids want to play. You got to have somebody officiate it. And the abuse that some people will take, um, they look at it and say it's not worth it, just not worth it, and they get out.
And you know what else is crazy? You just made me think about it too. Um, because I was completely unaware of, how desperate a lot of states are for officials. And it made me think about the pandemic, right? So
Hmm.
I'm sure when the pandemic happened, everything was crazy with sports. People was trying to figure out if they can play games, and, are they going to wear a mask? Are they going to allow, are they going to allow spectators? Like it was just so much to deal with. And I'm sure a lot of officials just decided to hang it up at that point.
Yeah,
How was the pandemic for you? Did you work? And if you did, were you wearing masks? Was it comfortable? Just to, tell me a little bit about your experience during that time.
I did work, and we did have a lot of older officials take the year off or retire. Because it wasn't worth it for them. Maybe they got older family member. I know one that had their mother-in-law live with them that was in her 90s. So they said, look, this just isn't worth it this year. So yeah, we had protocols. We had like beginning of the high school game, we have what we used to call captain meeting. We bring coaches and players, and we pretty much like tell them, okay, this is what we expect, and it's pretty much the same thing every game. Well, one of the things we did was, okay, we're not bringing coaches, and we're not bringing both referees. We're just going to bring the head referee and the coaches. So we wore masks, and we only had to wear them during dead balls. So during timeouts, most of us had gaiters, or some of us had black masks that we kept in our pocket or something. So during dead balls, we pulled it up. And so yeah, our locker rooms. A lot of times we be in a little room. They try to give us a locker room, like a team locker room, so we can spread out a little bit. Or we are supposed to come, business casual to a game. Now they allowed us to come already dressed, so we have our uniform on, and was like, okay, we can, be ready to go on the floor. So yeah, there were some protocols that we took. There were some people who didn't come back. Some people just took the year off. So yeah, I mean, we had to adjust just like everybody else.
Got you. Um, and I'm gonna move away from the violence, but before I do, I gotta talk about one more incident, right? Concerning my Kentucky Wildcats, right? So I'm sure you remember, but in 2007, in the Elite Eight, we lost to North Carolina, and the official, I think his name was John Higgins, right? So he had it pretty rough from the Kentucky fans after that
Right.
game. He was receiving death threats. People was, you know, they were just terrorizing the man. To be honest, man, do you remember that? And if
I
if
do.
you do remember it, how did you
I
feel
do. I do.
whenever all of that was going on?
Well, first of all, that was just classes of KSR to put his business, business phone number, address, and stuff like that. And John Higgins is one of the most respected officials in the game. I know a lot of people are going to disagree. John Higgins is a really good referee. Being a Louisville fan, got my Louisville on right here. But anyway, being a Louisville fan, John Higgins refereed the national championship game between Louisville and Michigan. He was on that game. So you don't get to that level without being good. And, John Higgins is a really good referee. But, I mean, I remember, I'm sure we get into this. Probably one call that, may I think it was Malik that drove to the basket. I mean, depend on your perspective. Maybe you thought he got fouled. Maybe you thought the ball got blocked. So and he didn't make a call on it. He thought it got blocked. And yeah, hey, that's what he gets paid to do is use his judgment.
Um, and speaking of that, right? So when it comes to using your judgment versus just things being black and white, either it's a violation or it's not, what sport is the most difficult for you to officiate? Is it football? Is it basketball? Or is it anything else you may have?
Basketball is the hardest because in because basketball, especially when the ball's live, you only got we call it about a second and a half to make a call. If not, then the ball's going the other way or something else done happen, and now it's too late. Where in football, you can you can throw your flag after the play is over. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people talk about late whistles, and we say there's no such thing as a late whistle. You'd rather be late and right than quick and wrong. We call it a patient whistle. And this is a little bit inside baseball with it, but this is one of the things they try to teach. And one thing in my game I've been trying to get better at is not being so quick with my whistle. Let's see what happens. Let it play out. Make sure you got what you got before you blow the whistle. So you try to give it a second and a half before you blow it. Um, and like I said, that's something that I have been working really hard at trying to get better at. Um, but yeah, basketball is definitely the hardest because you have to make a decision right there, and that moment can be gone in 2 seconds. And
Yeah,
then you just go, I missed it. You know what I'm saying?
right. And to piggyback off of that, you know, how do you feel about instant replay, right? And the reason why I'm asking you is explain to me like if somebody challenges a call you made, do you feel like it's a strike at your ego to go check the replay? Do you think instant replay is good for the game, or do you think that you should just be able to make a call and it is what it is?
No, I think we realize that we are human. We're going to make mistakes. So that's part of it. We want to get it right. The problem is, and let's just kind of take the way the NFL did the challenge of pass interference a couple years ago, and which ended up being a colossal failure because they didn't overturn. I think there was only like 3% of pass interference challenges that actually got overturned.
Are you speaking
And
about the Saints and the Rams, correct?
well, no, I mean after that,
Oh,
when
okay.
you remember at the season after that, they was like, okay, we're gonna add pass interference to one of the challenges. And so when coaches challenge it, it rarely got overturned one way or the other because it's a judgment call. Um, some things are black and white. Like if somebody step on the line or step out of bounds, the replay can show that and be clear. Okay, that it happens so quick, and sometimes we're just going to miss it. That's okay. I know the NBA has block charge replay. Um, and look, that's one of those judgment calls. And I don't watch enough NBA to tell you how much that get overturned from. Okay, that's a charge to a block, or a block to a charge. But I can understand if they're in the restricted and it's obvious that he's in the restricted circle. Yeah, okay, that's pretty cut and dry. But some things you can have two competent officials see the same thing and have two different opinions on it. Doesn't mean one's right or one wrong. One depends on angle, and just depends on what they saw or how they saw the play develop. And so, especially in basketball, well, yeah, I think in football too. You more in basketball than football. You just want one person making that call. There's a term in basketball officiating, and it doesn't happen too often, but it happens every now and then. I think it happened with Kentucky even this past year or year before. We call it a blarge. And basically that's when one official call a charge, the other one call a block.
Eh,
And number one, that's embarrassing for us. We
right.
we find that is the holy sin of basketball officials when you call a blarge. Because now you got to get together. Basically, you going, okay, we got to give fouls to both of them because we can't take either one of them back. You had a block, I got a charge. So we're going to assess fouls on both players. And now you got to determine, okay, who gets ball? Was the ball out of his hand? If the ball's not, then we're going to give it to the offense. If the ball was out of his hand, then we got to go to possession arrow. It's just too much. So to keep those things from happening, we talk about it in pregame. Okay, if it comes down the lane, we're going to let the league take it. It's yours all day long. And if I'm to see, I can blow, but I'm going to blow and hold. I'm going to blow and hold. See if you got anything. If you don't come out, then I can get it. But call your primary. And when you have your area and you call your primary, our percentage of calls we get right goes up. We don't guess as much because we're just focusing on our area. And we don't have situations where, you have two officials calling two different things.
Got you. And with you just talking about how y'all discuss things in pregame or whatever, it made me want to ask you this, right? So sometimes there's these unspoken rules of like, there's the whole they're letting them play tonight, and then there's like oh well, the game is on the line, he shouldn't call this. How do you feel about situations where, like, for instance, if it's like 2 minutes left, do
Mm-hmm.
you call fouls or do you let the players figure it out? Like, you understand what I'm saying?
The it's funny. They're also a philosophy. If you want to call it in the first second, you better be willing to call it in the last second. Okay. And a lot of time, the game is going to dictate how it flows. My personal philosophy: if I'm gonna call something in that last second, I feel like I got to be 100% sure on it. I'm gonna have to know, okay, because if I call it, I can go to the coach and say, "This is exactly what happened." You know what I'm saying? I can't go, okay, it looked like a foul. It may look like, but I don't know where the contact was. It looked, but did he hit him on the arm? I didn't see that. So I got to be pretty confident that I am right on this one if I'm going to call it in that. especially if it's going to determine a game one way or the other. I got to feel confident in it. Um, but if you are going to be made, if you're going to make that call in the first second of game, you got to be willing to call that call in the last second. And competent officials, that's not a problem with them. So, but like I said, you look, you get it to the last second, you already know how the game has been played. You and your crew has adjusted to how the players are playing, and the players have adjusted how the officials are calling it. So, um, I don't necessarily believe in the philosophy of, well, you can't make that call in that time. No, if there's time on the clock and something happened, you got to make the call.
Got you. And what I want to ask you also is, because we talked about it a little bit before we started the show, but one of the things that I feel like a lot of players have to make big adjustments for in the NBA is during the regular season, the referees seem to call a lot more fouls. There are some players that shoot a lot more free throws. Then in the
Mhm.
postseason, and this is probably because of money, the NBA wants to market the stars. They don't want owners and things to feel like referees cheated them out of a series. So the unspoken thing is that they don't call as many fouls to try to let the best players stay on the floor to determine the series. How do you feel about that? Do you think that it's fair that they should go back and forth kind of? Do you agree with it?
That's something we even talk about on the high school level, and it doesn't matter. Let's just say you got a girls' game, girls' varsity, and obviously you got one team that has one girl who's actually a player. She might not have no other players around her, but you can play. If she gets her third foul in the first, or even her fourth, and it's late in the game, we may come together and say, look, if she commits another foul, let's make sure it's a good one. Let's not call it ticky tack on, somebody's best player to get them out of the game. It's just game management. Um, the thing is, a lot of people watch the NBA and watch the game how it's official. There's a book called The Whistleblower, and they follow Ed Hightower, who was a big time Big Ten official, did Final Fours, national championship. Um, Probably retired about 10 years ago. His last year of officiating, they followed him around, and I can't think of the NBA referee name. I can see his face, and I'll show you a picture. You probably know who it is. Um, but anyway, they were at Ohio State, and the NBA referee's son plays for Ohio State, so he was there watching his son. So they got together after the game, and they sit in the bar, hanging out. And he said something that you got to realize: the NBA game, knowing it is entertainment, you see all those people sitting around that first row of the court. If you're at the Lakers game and you got seats right there by the bench, how much you think you paid for those tickets?
Probably like 10 to 30,000 probably.
Yeah. So if you pay $10,000 to $30,000 for a ticket, do you want to see LeBron James on the bench because he got two ticky tack fouls? Or you see he done made a great play to the basket and you call travel? You know what I'm saying? That's not what people paid for. Now you get to the college and the high school, it is more about the basketball than entertainment level. So, not that, but I've also was taught young, when I was young into it, and just different philosophy between different officials. If a player makes a great play, let that stand. Maybe he took a little extra step or drug the pivot, but if it's an outstanding play, play on.
So it's interesting that you said it like that because I was also going to ask you to define what your role is. So basically, and I'll let you speak on it, but it sounds like you were saying that you have to basically manage all of these different aspects, right? Because the players are going to entertain, the coaches are going to strategize, and different things like that. So, what more clearly define what you feel like your absolute role is in the game?
Well, look, I am a game manager. It's my job to make sure that the game is the game is managed in a good and fair way. Um, but I also am there to enforce rules. Now, do we kind of pick and choose what rules that we are going to be strict on and what we're going to, let's say, we are going to try to talk them out? For instance, anybody who's ever seen me referee or referee, and I'm pretty vocal about it during a game, it's 3 seconds. If somebody's in the lane, I tell them, 14, get out of the lane, get out. Now, my philosophy: if I tell you 3 times and you don't move, obviously you in there 3 seconds.
Gotcha.
You know, because those was one of those calls that, why, if you can referee him out of the lane and preventive, we also call it preventive officiating. You know, if you see something could be a problem, if you can talk somebody out of it for being a problem before it is a problem, or talk them out, do that, because that's going to keep the game flowing. You know, um, Look, every time we blow our whistle, we got bad news for somebody.
Right.
Especially in basketball, we blow the whistle. Okay, I got a foul on somebody, or somebody just turned the ball over. So we never have good news when that whistle blow, because you foul, you just that one more foul closer to being disqualified out of the game. So you may hear referees tell somebody, get your hands off, clean, or if you got two guys in the post, clean it up. you know let's talk them out of it before we actually got to call a foul.
And I'm actually glad that you brought that up because you know, a lot of times when you watch the game and there's too much officiating, it can make for a boring, ugly game, right? And
Sure.
the thing that I want to move into, to piggyback off of that is, are you afraid that maybe like pretty much everything else they try to do in this country, that with modern technology, that eventually they could try to phase the human aspect of officiating out of the game? And the reason why I'm asking you is because the way you just described how you try to manage the game, do you think it's just always going to be necessary to have the human aspect involved?
It is going to be always necessary. I think so. Now I know baseball is, I don't even know what they call that strike zone. That can be computerized, and I think some leagues are experimenting with it. Uh, but yeah, and players don't want players and coaches don't want the game to be called by robots. You may think you do until you get that robot, because there's no, like I said, there's no, a robot's only going to be able to see it white and black, and not going to be able to determine that gray area. Not going to be able to talk you out of things before they happen. It happened, then they got to penalize it. Because basically, it doesn't matter what sport it is. The first thing you kind of learn when you're officiating is advantage, disadvantage. If it doesn't call it disadvantage, then there's no need to call it. You know, um, like for instance, the old cliche: there's a hold on in football. There's a hold on every play.
I can
You know what I'm
imagine.
saying? you know, but if it's a hold on the right side, but the ball's over on the left side, and that defender is never going to make that tackle in 1,000 years. Is it really necessary to call that hold?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Or a player, or in basketball, you got somebody driving to the hole, and yeah, there's a little contact, but they able to finish strong. You know, play on. And is a robot able going to be able to tell you, okay, have that judgment of, okay, this is a play on, or this one that we have to get.
Right. And it reminds me, I had seen a little video, and I never pay attention to who the officials are. But Kevin Durant was he was having a conversation, like a side
Ed
conversation with,
Moley.
is that who it
Ed
was? And
Moley.
he was asking him like about something that happened when somebody like swung a ball and he fouled him.
Right, right.
And then the referee was explaining to him like, well, if you do it like this, then that's good with me. And I just kind of really appreciated that because it was his way of saying, "Look, I called it on you because this happened, but this is how you
Yeah,
can correct that in the future." And how did you
yeah.
feel about
And
that?
I mean, no, that's great officiating. And I think I posted in the group a picture. I know Ike was being funny, but Ed Moley is my favorite NBA official. He when you watch him, I mean, he just to somebody with a train act, Ed Moley just pops to you. You just go wow at him. But no, that's great officiating. I mean, most players learn as they go up the ranks. If you come up and ask the official if fouls called on you, what did I do? He's going to tell you. He's going to tell you, okay, how can, and then when you're like, okay, how can I avoid it? He's going to tell you how to avoid it. A coach will ask you what happened. If you explain it to him, 95% coaches are good with it. You know what I'm saying? Okay, I got it. How can I teach? How can I coach my players not to do this? So that's just great officiating. I mean, part of officiating is being able to communicate. You're gonna have to be able to communicate with players. You're gonna have to be able to communicate with coaches. Now, there's a line. We're not, like I said earlier, we're not going to sit here and have a 2-minute conversation about it. We're not going to argue about it. But you ask me a question, I'm going to give you an answer. Now, you might not always like the answer, but I will give you an answer.
Gotcha. All right. Well, listen, man. Now I want to get into some more fun stuff with you, right? So
All
I'm gonna
right.
kick it off with my favorite player of all time, Michael Jeffrey Jordan, The Last Dance, 1998 against the Utah
Okay.
Jazz, the push off. Explain how you feel about that call, and would you have made a call or left it how it was?
I would love to have it was. I mean, if you actually look at that play, how he actually, you know, uh, I can't even remember the player's name
Byron
for
Russell.
Utah. Byron Russell, momentum was already going that way. You know what I'm saying? So there's a little bit, and it is Mike. You guys, everybody, those officials knew who you was dealing with, and they knew the situation. So yeah, he kind of nudged them on a little bit, but by rule, and I don't know what the NBA rule was back in '98, but there is something called legal guard position. Byron Russell didn't have it. So no, you probably let that play on and look, and Mike holds it up, he poses, and Mike is Mike. So no, I probably wouldn't have called that.
Absolutely, man. And I appreciate you saying that, man. Well, listen. So now we got to go to football, right? And we got to talk about the other GOAT of all GOATs, Tom Brady. So in 2001, the AFC playoffs against the Raiders. This is arguably the start of the dynasty,
Oh,
right? The
oh yeah,
Tuck rule. Explain to me how you feel about the Tuck rule.
it's a bad rule, but the referees nailed it. And see, in some things, it's the, we can argue about the rule and we can agree or disagree if it's a bad rule. I mean, eventually the NFL got rid of the tuck rule because I mean, for the official, that's a hard call for them to make. I mean, that is one of the toughest. I mean, no matter how much you slow that down, how many different angles you look at it, that's a tough, tough call. So it was, and NFL eventually realized that's a bad rule, so we got to get rid of the rule.
Right.
So referees got it right, bad rule.
Definitely, man. And I had brought it up a little bit earlier, but so let's talk about that 2019 playoff with the Saints and the Rams. The I think it was Coleman, and basically
Mhm.
it was pass interference, right?
Yeah,
But it didn't happen, right? So how did you feel about that play?
I mean, we all saw it. We all saw it, and you was right. And I think I saw a report, and it didn't get reported very much. I think I only saw it once. That um that deep wing thought the ball was tipped at the line of scrimmage, which if it's tipped in the line of scrimmage, you can't have pass interference. Um, but mechanically, where he messed up, he should throw the flag anyway. Now, let's be honest. Nobody knows what that wing was thinking except for him. And I'm sure as soon as he got off the field, his supervisor, if he wasn't in the building, he was on the phone with him. What what happened? And he had to explain himself. The thing about that is, if you are in that NFC AFC championship game, you got to realize those referees are trying to get to the Super Bowl too. They try to grade out to referee a Super Bowl, which is probably no higher honor that you can have. And I tried to look this up after it happened because I think politically, there's no way you could have him in the Super Bowl after missing that call.
Right.
I just don't think you could go. He could probably call the perfect game up to that point. I had a veteran official once tell me we're in the middle of a game and it's coming down, and it's a 1-2 possession game. I think maybe a 1 point game. Timeout. We get together and he said, "Look, all anybody's ever going to remember is this play right here. So let's get it right.
Yeah.
Don't mind. It doesn't matter how well you did before that. If that last play, somebody feel like it cost them a game, that's all they're going to remember." So I don't think look, maybe he did get Super Bowl. I don't know. But I try to look it up. Maybe he lost somewhere close to probably $40,000-$50,000 if he wasn't on that Super Bowl game. So I think that's one of the misperception people have about officials, that we're not held accountable. We are held accountable. There are suspensions that we have. I had a situation, not this basketball season, past basketball season, that look, I blew it. I blew a call, and I got held accountable for it. So when you are at college level, NBA, and you miss a rule, I'm sure there are repercussions for it. Now it's not public, but there are repercussions for it.
And all right, so this is gonna be my last one, and this I gotta test you with this one because I know you an Eagles fan. So tell me, did Dez Bryant make the catch or not, and explain why?
No, he didn't. I think, but by rule, and there's probably one of those things where we can look at it and go, bad rule. By rule, he didn't catch it. He never had complete control of it and survived the ground. So no, it wasn't a catch by rule. So um so no, Des Bryant didn't catch it.
Right, my brother. And listen, man, I ain't gonna hold you too much longer. I know you got things to do today, but before I let you go though, I want you to tell me what what are your goals and aspirations in the future for officiating, and you know, how far are you gonna take this thing?
I my one of my goals I have is I would love to do, make it to the state tournament. But a regional final is one of the atmosphere that I want to work. There's probably not a better atmosphere that you go down in the 12th region or the ninth region, because we get switched out during regions. We go to other regions and other regions will come and referee, and you got a packed house, or you are in Northern Kentucky, a university, and you got 4 or 5 thousand people there, with two schools trying to get to a Sweet 16, or you in Louisville and you got Mel and Ballard, or J Town and Fern Creek, and the and Valley High School's packed, and you got just teams, trying to get to one of their ultimate goals. So that's one of the goals I've set for myself, to do a regional final and eventually a Sweet 16. Um, but also I've been going to camps to do women's college, small women's college. So hopefully, that will work out in the next couple of years, and I can do a couple of years of women college. One of the things I really wish that somebody would grab me at 20 and 21 years old, you know, um, and say, "Hey, look, you're not gonna be an NFL quarterback, but here's another way you can get to the NFL, or here's another way you can you know, do Division One basketball or Division One football, or being a major league umpire or whatever the case may be. Um, I think what we talked about recruiting earlier. I'm just going to use this as a recruiting pitch on your platform. Is that um, you don't realize how much money you can make just by doing this. I took all my basketball money from this past season, and me and my wife's taking a 7-day cruise. You know, flight paid for, the cruise paid for, all with basketball money. So you a lot of people, in these kind of economic times are looking to make extra money. You love the game, come officiate. Start rec league, and you can go out there at your local rec center or some league and do 4 games, $25-$30 a game, and you know what, you don't made $100 or you made $200 in a weekend, even more. It just depends. So we need more officials, we need more younger officials, and we need more young officials that's ambitious to, okay, you know what, let's see how far I can take this. Because people don't, I had no idea how serious it was, even on the high school level, until I got into it. How serious, how serious these guys take it, what the training is. I mean, they just don't give us a whistle and a shirt and tell us go out there and you got Brown Station Henry Clay boys. That doesn't happen. Those guys who, you go to one of these local high school games and you got Henry Clay, Brown Station, or Lexington, Kathleen, Scott County. Those guys out there know what they're doing, and they've been doing it for a while. And just the investment that we put in when you're trying to get to a college or the NBA, the investment that we put in, because these camps aren't cheap. There's, you have to pay some $300 to $700 just to have them look at you for 3, maybe 4 games if you're lucky. So yeah, we also put in the work.
That's what's up, man. And I just thought of something, right? So I know I told you I was gonna let you go, and I promise I
No,
ain't.
we're good,
But
bro.
I gotta ask you one more thing, right? So with you doing basketball and football, and I was talking with somebody about this, and I think some of the best performances, individual performances you see are on the high school level, because when you
Hmm.
see those top notch players, they're usually light years ahead of the other
Sure,
players.
sure.
So you might see like Derrick Henry score 7 touchdowns in a game and have like 500-600 yards rushing, or you might see somebody like I think Deron Land for Kentucky hit like 12 or 13 threes on like 12 or 13 straight possessions or something.
Wando Robinson at Western Hills.
Right.
He got into it. I mean, I think he left right before I got into it. And these official was like, look, we saw him first time, and it was like, whoa. He was just so much. Or Derek Willis when he played at Lafayette, and then he goes to Alabama, and now you see him playing with the Cleveland Browns. Those kind of things. Or for me, Jerome Morton at Clark County, I remember refereeing him at 3rd and 4th grade AAU, and now to see him as one of the top players, in the state, Reed Shepard. Remember Reed Shepard, his father Jeff referee. I mean, it was 3rd grade, and I remember specifically there's one game where Jeff is coaching. I'm sure Reed's on the team, where they didn't score a basket, but now to see him a top 50 player in the country,
Right.
that's pretty satisfying. And you go, yeah, we do get to see these kids grow up and do big things.
That's what's up, man. Well, listen, man, look, Shawn Gerton, man, Lexington, Kentucky's most famous or infamous, depending on how you look at it, the #1 official out here doing this thing, man. Listen, good luck to you this afternoon at the AU tournament, brother. And I'm sure I'll have you back on sooner than later, man. And yeah, man, we'll get back at it.
All right, man, I appreciate it.
All right, brother. And thank y'all for tuning in once again. We'll see y'all again next time. Sports and Discourse with Derek Stevenson.